Well, we're here in Morgan Hill today, and we're here to visit with our good friend and brother, Howard Hibbard, who served in Vietnam in our unit in 1970, I believe, 69 and 70. So we're here to conduct a Wolfhound oral history, which is different than just unit history, because unit histories are just printed material that wind up in the records in St. Louis somewhere, and then the place burns down and then they're gone and so forth. So this is actually a living, live document that will be put in the archives, and the National Archives, and be on our website for 100 years. So I think it's very important. And we're going to start out real simple. I'm just going to ask you where you were born and raised.
Milford, Delaware, and I basically raised all over the place. My father was a chemical engineer, and in the early 50s, early 60s, and so different companies would hire him to come in and do a chemical engineering job, and then once he solved their problem and everything, he moved. So he moved. I think he moved like 9 times before I was
Wow.
6 years old.
Lots of schools, lots of changes.
Hanging around with DuPont, all those chemicals.
Oh, wow. And what's your date of birth?
April 2nd, 1947.
Okay. And did you volunteer for the service, or were you drafted?
I volunteered.
What were you doing at that time in your life?
Losing my mind. But actually what it was is I was really dissatisfied with just being in college and just seeing it. I was like in the social register, and so I was expected to, graduate from school, get a middle manager job in New York, and then buy a house in the suburbs and commute back and forth. I was just saying, it looked like a dead life. So I said, no, I'm going to do something different.
And of course, this was the 60s.
Yes.
I mean, our society was not exactly in that format. Changes were
Yes.
really taking place.
And so I decided to do basically the ultimate challenge, which was like join the Army, and I worked my way up to the ranks, through basic advanced infantry training, officer candidate school for 6.
And I'm gonna ask you about that.
Oh.
So when you signed on the dotted line, did you have any idea, this is my goal, I want to be an officer, I want to be company command, or were you just saying, I'm going to get in this and we'll see where it goes?
I said I want to get in this and see where it goes.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to use a college degree to become an officer. I want to say I did it the hard way.
Do you remember the recruiter?
No.
And the officer? I mean, did
Well,
you go into an office and?
Well, I actually went into a recruiter one time, and they sent me down for some tests, and I just decided, I was looking at what he was offering me, and I said, look, I'm just going to volunteer for the draft. So I just went back down to where I was living in Connecticut, and just volunteered for the draft.
So if you volunteered for the draft, did that mean you got a 3-year commitment instead of a 4?
2. It was a 2-year commitment if you volunteer for the draft.
Oh, okay.
And then I had to extend a year when I went to go to officer candidate school.
Okay. And so where did you take your basic training?
Fort Bragg.
Okay, and tell me your impression when I'm assuming you were bused there.
Oh, yeah.
And, okay, and so they opened the door. Just take it from there, Howard. What happened the minute they opened that bus door?
What they love to do to all the new trainees is, actually for like 2 weeks after I volunteered, I was at like someplace, and we just were there freezing to death, and they didn't know what to do with us because they had so many people coming in, that particularly after TET, that they didn't know. So we sort of like floated around a bit, but at Fort Bragg, when we got there, so when you get off the bus, the DIs are just yelling at you like you cannot believe. And they would take us to these old barracks that probably hadn't been used since Korea, and we had to get
Or World War II.
Oh, yeah.
The old wooden barracks.
Yeah, well, when I got discharged at Travis, I described that, and you remember in my next novel about how much fun it was. This building had a tilt to it. But we had to clean it up, and then there was just basic training, which is just standard. And I went to advanced infantry training out of Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay, so you went to Fort Lewis for AIT, okay.
And then I went to officer candidate school.
So let me ask you this, at AIT, at the end of basic, they give you your MOS. So in
Yes.
other words, they say you're gonna be a cook, you're gonna be in infantry and so forth. Did you get 11 Bravo out of basic, and then that's why you went to Washington?
Yeah, I figured I was completely screwed, so
So you were like the rest of us. You
Yes.
got the 11B, and
I decided that the best thing is if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it like the officers are doing it.
sure.
They seem to have a lot more fun.
So tell me about AIT.
The AIT was really interesting in Fort Lewis. They really tried to get as much Vietnam training as they could, but they were nowhere near equipped to do it, just because the environment by itself wasn't similar. That's why I ended up going to Germany for my first year as an officer, and then my second year was in Vietnam.
I'm going to back you up. You graduate AIT.
Yes.
All of a sudden, there's a conversation about you going to OCS, apparently.
No, they dropped by and told me I was qualified to go to OCS.
Oh, so this was during AIT?
Yeah.
Oh, so you knew when you graduated from AIT, you were going to officer training?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And everybody else is going to Vietnam.
Well, and you know, a lot of guys at the end of AIT, they had some OCS recruiters there, and they were kind of schmoozing guys and saying, you know, we'd like to have you go to OCS. And I was one of those candidates. And they set me down, and they were very respectful, very serious. And I was listening to them, and I said, wait, something popped up in my mind, and I said, wait a minute.
Don't do it.
No, I said, wait a minute, okay, sounds good. What would that do for my commitment? I'm a 2-year draftee. And they said, well, that's going to add some more years on and your commitment. And I said, okay, I'm still in the conversation. What would I do? Oh, he says, well, you're going to be an officer in Vietnam.
You get shot first.
And so I thought about it, 2 years, 1 year in Vietnam, and 1 year, you know, half of it's training, half of it's going to be something. And I thought, I can go to Vietnam for a year and come home and then be back in life. If I'm an officer, I'm almost guaranteed I'm going to get killed. I mean, I knew that even out of AIT, because of all the Vietnam vets that we're training in our classes. They tell you. I mean, they tell you exactly what's going on. And so I looked at him and I said, you know, thank you so much for the offer. But I'm going to pass. And he said, why? And I said, because 2 years, not 4. That's it. I just said, I just don't want to do that. But you, on the other hand, you went, no, I want to.
Well, that's it. I just wanted to go to officer candidate school just to see what it's like to be an officer. It was fun. The thing is, I hadn't graduated.
Was it a challenge, like, almost?
Well, it was a challenge. I'll tell you what, the challenge was physically. I'd never been in that condition in my entire life. When I went to jump school, I dropped out and called cadence because I was in that kind of condition.
Oh, wow.
You had to run everywhere you went for 6 months.
Yeah.
It was amazing. We carried the M14, a really charming weapon.
Wooden heavy stocks.
Oh, God, it was amazing how heavy that thing could get. I mean, you'd be like...
Is this in OCS we're talking about?
Yeah, this is Fort Benning, Georgia.
Okay.
Benning School for Boys.
Okay.
And one thing they found interesting about the people that I was with was, I think probably in my training company, they had 60% college graduates. I mean, it was amazing. And in my officer candidate school class, the average education was a master's degree.
My.
I think I was a sophomore when I quit school.
Sure.
So I was dragging the average down.
Sure. And so tell me a little bit about OCS. Was it anything like basic or AIT, or was it more like you were enrolled in a charm school?
Well, it definitely was not a charm school, at least the infantry school isn't. And they tried to do a pretty good job. I felt at the end that I got the basic skills to be a lieutenant in the field. You know, if I had to call an artillery, I could call an artillery. If I had to do different things, you know, I do the tricks like when you call an artillery, you always get a Willie Peter 200-foot airburst before you call in.
Absolutely.
Fire for effect.
Yeah.
Little
And
tips like...
we've had some discussions with some of the other guys that I've interviewed about that exact subject. And unfortunately, we had a lieutenant that either didn't get it because we told him never fire and put HE on the deck first.
Absolutely.
You always get a marking round and then you can adjust.
Absolutely.
And apparently he did not.
Well, he might have been OC, he was probably not, was the Officer Candidate School, Fort Benning?
I
was
don't
he
know. I don't know.
It sounds like ROTC people. The ROTC people, they
Well,
should
as
never.
a matter of fact, he was National Guard.
Well, you know.
That answers that question. So anyway, unfortunately, on a couple of occasions, he brought it in on top of him. And some guys got killed and so forth. But that's another story. But that's how unfortunate it is for something like never put an HE on the deck first.
Ever.
I mean, it just seems like an obvious thing to me, but apparently he either didn't get it or whatever. So, and by the way, you know, there's a lot of hard feelings about that.
Well, sure, yes, I can imagine.
No, I mean, there's a lot of guys that still, you know, to this day, really have some bad.
Well, you take that responsibility, you know, and you make a mistake like that. As far as I'm concerned, they should have put him in jail.
You know, and a lot of stuff, you know, there was a lot of friendly casualties in Vietnam.
30% were friendly fire.
We, not to get off the subject, but we just recently interviewed one of the vets, and they went out on an ambush patrol one night, and the lieutenant said, I want you to go to the end of this hedgerow, and I want you to sit there and watch the end of that, so just in case they try to come around that end, you'll be an early warning. And which he did, and it got dark, and he was sitting there, and he saw shadows moving right towards him, and then he saw a gook, and he killed him right then and there. Boom, he killed that gook right there, and then he saw all these shadows moving, and he opened up, and it turned out that it was a platoon of GIs that were in the wrong place.
You know, I remember that.
And the point man was a Kit Carson scout. He was a gook, but he was, you know, and so that's all he saw. And then he opened up, and 18 of the platoon were wounded that night.
Yeah, in fact, that lieutenant went to Officer Candidate School with me. I hate to say it.
Wow.
And I visited him in the hospital, and I asked him what the hell happened, and he said he actually went out that night without a strobe.
Mm.
And I go like, what? I mean, how's that possible?
Sure.
But
and it's interesting you say the different training officers got between OCS and National Guard, or what was the other one you said? You were either OCS or
ROTC.
Oh, ROTC.
College
ROTC.
kids.
Yeah. Do you think we had a lot of ROTCs over there?
Yeah, because
officers?
well, they were trying to get out of everything they possibly could get out of. So they were, to me, it was just amazing that they would put those people in the field in a position of command. Because the stuff they teach you in ROTC is like, you know, to me, a combat platoon is a collaboration with everybody, the platoon sergeant and lieutenant. And you always ask, what do you think about this?
Yes,
I always made it a point for me, like, what do you think I think about this? Okay, well, it's, you know, it's
and the older guys that had been there a while had better opinions than the new lieutenant that just walked in.
Which I fully expected and agreed with. I was happy about it. You know, but a lot of those ROTC guys, like, you know, follow me. I'm like,
oh, I know.
It was ridiculous.
Backing up, when did you step foot in Vietnam?
I'm not sure. Sometime, I think we were Tan Son Nhut. And we landed, and then we opened the door, and I walked out, and then from that air-conditioned airplane, and then literally everything, dates, times, and places just started.
Well, you were wet, for one thing. You instantly turned wet.
It was incredible.
What was the smell like when you got out of the plane?
Even at Tan Son Nhut, they've been shelled the night before and stuff, and so there's a smell of like burnt.
Yep. Everybody says that. It was just something that you never forget. The smell was just.
Well, plus they were probably burning the sewage, which always had a delightful aroma.
That's right. And so you get off the plane. What was your first impression?
I'm not going to get out of this alive.
So you figured that out in the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then the first night we were there, I actually met another lieutenant, because I'd gone to Germany, and this other lieutenant that also had ROTC, not ROTC, but Officer Candidate with me. He was just coming back, and I actually met him at the bar. I was like, wow, he's through it. He goes like, he said, I'm just ready to go out in the field. He just looked at me like, I'm really sorry.
Oh, yeah.
He said, but his story was incredible. He landed, and they were in a firefight, and he found his platoon, and he found the platoon sergeant Sergeant, the police sergeant said, yeah, I'm here, I'm your new lieutenant. And they said, well, Sergeant, we were finding these people over here. And he lifted up his head, took a bullet right across the helmet, didn't completely knocked him out.
Wow.
But he had the record, 30 seconds for the most time, for the fastest time lieutenant ever going on and off field.
Wow. So you're in Vietnam. When did you find out you were going to be a Wolfhound?
I'm not sure.
Did anybody tell you when they handed you your orders? Did they say anything about the Wolfhounds?
No.
So you didn't know what you were getting into.
No.
And the reason I ask that is on more than a few occasions when we'd sit in the bleachers and wait for our name to be called, and then they give you your orders where you're going to go. At that point, you didn't know if you were going to go to the 101st or the 25th.
I was a paratrooper, so I thought I was going to go. I thought I was going to go to a
82nd or the 101st was over there.
Right. I thought. Whether it was the 101st or the Wolfhounds, I felt equally doomed, if that's any consolation. I mean, it's just not everyone has the jump school training. And so you're supposed to be with the kind of a jump unit. But
Now, as an officer, did you get treated better than I did? When they told you where they were going, did they say, go get on that deuce and a half over there and they're going to take you to Cu Chi?
They said, they prefaced it by saying,
they didn't have a private
Lieutenant, get on that truck.
They didn't have a private helicopter that came in.
Not for lieutenants.
Okay. And what do you remember about when you arrived at the company? Now, as an officer, I'm assuming you had to actually check in and company commander, I would think, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was really interesting. I finished the Wolfhound training thing. It was
the 3-day, and they did call that charm school.
Yeah.
That is actually what they called it.
And it was really worthwhile. I thought for the first time, I was really actually with people who could really help me for this problem that we were
Well,
in.
it certainly got you ready for explosive devices because remember they used to set off those concussion grenades?
Well, if you remember, my little chant in the novel is like, do not pick up anything on the ground. And,
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, yes.
At least it brought a little bit of realism to the situation. So you go and get...
So I got on a helicopter and they took me out to Shamrock. What a hole. It was monsoon season. It was dark. There was like this little enclave of sandbags that was surrounded by muddy water. It looked like it was going to overtake the whole thing. I mean, I said, what a pit. There's like 4 of us in one of those dugout things that they had. It just was...
With the bunker, you mean, and the PSP on top with the sandbags?
So I mean, the Shamrock was just...
That used to fill up with water during the monsoon season?
And then going out on an ambush. What a charming thing to do.
So, welcome to Vietnam. Here's Shamrock. And did you know you were going to be in charge of the platoon at that point?
Yes.
You knew where you were going? Okay.
Yeah, the company commander told me.
So you go up and say, guys, I'd like to introduce myself.
I actually crawled in the bunker that was crowded and said, I'm the lieutenant. And said, we don't have a bunker for you. And I said, fine, I'll just stay right here. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what was your feeling? Were you going pretty confident at that point?
I was terrified. To see just how disheveled that place was, and just how when I crawled in and looked at these guys' faces, I'm going like, it was just so sad to me that this is actually, I mean, when I see the pictures of how these guys are living in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I think how we were living, I went like, oh, what happened here? It firmly convinced me that I was not going to get out of it alive.
Yeah, and about, if I'm correct, about 3 weeks before you walked into that bunker that night, we lost 5 of our guys through B-40 rockets that they were shooting in. Remember the cyclone fence that they'd put up in front of the bunkers?
Yeah.
All they had to do is hit that fence and they'd explode and the shrapnel would just go all over. So 5 killed and several wounded. They're out. So now our numbers are depleted. And now here comes new lieutenant. And,
Bozo.
You didn't know. Nobody told you, I'm assuming, back in Cu Chi. Oh, by the way, you're going into a unit that just about 3 weeks ago got their asses handed to them.
But I heard about it
Yeah.
because they were all clustering on top of the sandbags like they were told not to.
Yeah.
So it was really clear to me that if you're not, if you're not walking around, then be in your bunker and shut up.
So next day, this is an interesting question too, because not being an officer, I can't get into your head. I don't know what an officer walking into Vietnam is like. You'd been trained in a very militaristic way. You do formation, you do, certain things that you just do. Did you have any thoughts about, well, tomorrow morning I got to get my guys out and form them up and have them stand at attention and
No, I spent 1 year in Germany, and my platoon sergeant made it really clear who ran the platoon.
Okay.
And if he wanted to form them up, then he could form them up. If he didn't want to form them up, I was just going to stay there and shut up.
Well, no, you're absolutely correct. And the ones that actually didn't think that through and tried to run it, no, I mean seriously, if tried to run a platoon like that,
Ridiculous.
it was not a good outcome.
I believe it.
It wasn't a good outcome. And so, who in your memory did you, that night or the next morning, who was your platoon sergeant?
The guy was in Puerto Rico.
Oh, Marquez.
Marquez.
Okay. And did he give you kind of an orientation, and this is what we're doing, this is what we're about, or what our operations are like, or?
Not really very much. He really didn't have to say very much. If you took a look around Shamrock.
Oh, I know. Well, it was a dump.
You had a real firm idea that
And by the way,
this is the end of the
It
world.
was a dump when it was dry. I mean, it wasn't just the rain, just the monsoon.
I feel better now.
So then you're in charge of a platoon, and now you're going to meetings at the CP, and they're saying this is your mission, and I'm assuming because you're pretty well trained in OCS, you're going, okay, I get this, and so I'm assuming they probably gave you a couple of day riffs. They didn't probably send you out first night on a night ambush patrol, did they?
I think the first night was the ambush patrol.
Oh, so you got baptized by fire.
And I actually, when we went out, we finally walked out of the water. There was a road, so we went down this road. There was like a little enclave. So we went in there and set up. And then I can't remember who it was, but someone in the platoon put his hand out and realized that all the bushes had been booby trapped.
Oh my!
So after we were down, we all had to get up, crawl. You couldn't see anything. Couldn't see your face, your hand in front of your face. So we're going out the one handy on the ground thing, and then we literally just had to sit on the side of the road. I describe it in the second novel. And we just had to sit there just with our rifles like this going, because like there's going to be, if they came down the road, there's going to be like zero space.
And so you made it through that night, and daylight's coming, and of course you get up and move, and you're headed back. So you probably thought, well, I survived one night in Vietnam, which was a good thing. And did you then start trying to learn about your guys? Did you talk to them, and did you try to find out who you actually had in your platoon?
To a degree, but after I was trained in Germany, what I really saw happening was officers are supposed to be officers, and when you see officers that are trying to be too friendly or too this or too that, it doesn't work out well. It's like there's a real dividing line there, whether you like it or not. And I actually got disciplined because some of the guys that I went to advanced infantry training school with ended up in Germany, and I ended up with the same unit of them in Germany. And we all went out drinking one night, and then the battalion commander hauls me in and says, "Young man, there will be no fraternizing." I'm going,
yeah.
What? I said, I went to school with these guys. He said, that's too bad. That was another life.
And by the way, that really does confirm to me, because the officers that we got from OCS were exactly what you just described. Here we are, a lot of us were experienced, and here this guy comes and he has no experience, and we're trying to get him to come in our circle so that we can train him and teach him and so forth. And they were always, I guess fraternization.
Well,
was
fraternization, but I'd be hard pressed to think they weren't listening, because what I try to do, what I really understood was that my chain of command was a platoon sergeant and then the squad leaders, and then if something came up, maybe an individual soldier, but and they wanted to preserve that command structure too. So it was really important for them and for me not to violate it.
Well, and the interesting thing too is all of a sudden you became a team leader. Now, what I'm saying by that, it's a platoon, but you are now that team. It's a team.
Yes.
Your platoon had to be a team, didn't it?
Well, if you're going to get through this alive, it had to be a team. I mean, just the fact that you have all the different munitions that you're carrying. You've got machine guns, you've got dupers. I mean, you have to move that.
Claymores?
Claymores, your own portable artillery. But the unit has to function in a certain way to get the best use for all these different kinds of weapon systems, depending upon what you're going after.
Now, when you would go, everybody's got their own style, but when you take your guys out on an ambush patrol at night, did you go and place them where you wanted them, like an L or a rear security?
I had the sergeant squad.
Okay, so your platoon sergeant did that. Then that's pretty common.
Yeah, it's just like the platoon sergeant and I would talk about where we would set it up, because we would like to set up in a spot whereby that we have the most guys in a really in a defensive position,
Yes.
where the most guys get the most sleep.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. And at least try to set them up so they're not going to get rear-ended.
Thank you.
You know.
Have a circular position that was defended on all
Yep.
sides, or at least a machine gun on one end if things get exciting.
What was the weapon that you carried when you?
M16. I carried M16. I carried 2 claymores. I carried a law. And I usually carried 2 boxes extra machine gun in the box. I never draped. I always thought it was strange to drape this brass extra crosshair. You making yourself a brass target, but.
Well, at least you were thinking about the eventuality that you might find yourself in a situation where guys were going to run out of ammo.
Well, when I was in Germany, I read about 10 different books on guerrilla warfare. And basically, they all made it really clear that when the first shot is fired, you're already screwed. And then so carrying extra stuff, and I think, I don't know if you remember or not, but I think people respected it. I wasn't trying to lighten the load on myself.
No question about it. We did respect that. And
Carry your own weight, please.
Yep, you bet. So you described your very first ambush patrol, which wasn't very far out, and it was by the road and so forth. What was the first time that you took your unit out and you either opened up on the enemy or you were opened up on?
That was the night of September 5th, which is a really sad thing to say, because particularly you read the book, and you had people fleeing the battlefield, officers included, fleeing the battlefield. The company commander got shot. And from an officer's standpoint, just about everything would go wrong went. I mean, actually I don't know if you remember this other lieutenant that was there. They finally got him offline, but he was also the one who went down and set up the ambush on the river. The next thing we do is all this 50 caliber and all stuff was coming up. We're like, what the hell happened down there? He's such an idiot. But I remember when I had to crawl up and get the company commander. When I came back, and then everybody left, and it's just our platoon, our platoon. And these guys look at me like, Lieutenant Hibbard, what have you done? Why did you get the memo? Aren't we supposed to be leaving?
Exactly.
And so we had to spend the night. We had to gather up the remnants of the people that were kicked off the helicopters.
No, exactly.
It was a sterling day for the Wolfhound history. I guarantee you that.
But I will tell you this: that was not an uncommon. You know that. I mean, as you were there longer, you found out that a lot of times you were isolated, and it didn't make sense. Or you go, wait a minute, how did we end up like this? But that was the war. I mean, that was the Vietnam War. So that was pretty common as well.
Sorry to hear that.
Well, you know what? It's just we talked. I've talked extensively about friendly fire casualties, and did you say 30%?
Yeah, that's a fact.
I mean, and there's as a squad leader, in my case, I was always responsible for these guys, and when one of them would get killed, it was my job to go get his personal stuff, and I always would get into his bag and find some letters, find his folks' address and so forth, or his fiance, and then I would write a letter. And by the way, that was one of the toughest jobs I ever had as an NCO.
Absolutely.
In Vietnam. I mean, I'd rather go out on an ambush patrol than write one of those letters. And many of them were accidents. And of course, I never told them. I never wrote one time that your son was killed because some idiot, you know,
Didn't have the safety on, tripped.
or the artillery issue.
Oh, that's,
I mean, you know, and it was always, I always said, you know, what an honor it was to serve with him, and he was always out front. And, you know, I mean, just a hero. I always said, you know, your son didn't die for nothing, although in my heart I thought he did. I got to be honest with you.
it was, what a waste. I mean, the whole
You know,
war, what a waste.
And so, and then I usually never heard back from him, which is fine. I mean, I was glad because I didn't want to have to answer any more questions. But in 2003, when I started when I had this whole epiphany and I started looking for the guys, guess who I started finding? The families of our guys that got killed. And when I got one of them on the phone, man, was it ever an emotional roller coaster.
Absolutely.
Because they were so happy to actually talk to a human being that had been with their son. And their first question was this: how did he die? And the reason is because the Army, as you know, would send a telegram. We regret to inform you that your son was killed on such and such a date in the province of, and then they put some Vietnamese province in there, through one of 5 categories. Explosive device, gunfire. I mean, you know, they had, and that, you fit into one of those. Booby traps or mines, you know. And so nothing, no, not who the company commander was, not who his platoon sergeant was, nothing. And so these families, these families, years and years, never got any closure. You know, and when I would find them, the first thing they'd say, and of course, again, even though this man that was in my squad got killed by an accident, never did I ever say that. You know, I always painted a very heroic picture, and it was good because that gave them peace. You know, and some of my guys went home with a welded casket, welded shut. And that was another question. Why was it a closed casket? And I always had a stock answer. I'd say, well, sometimes in battle, bodies get kind of beat up. And the reason they do that is because they don't want to cause the family trauma. Even though, and I never would say because there was only an arm in there. No, I mean, never would you ever say that, but you know what, sometimes that was the case. There were guys that were so blown up that...
Well, Tommy Clack is a perfect example. How did he live through that?
You know, it's amazing. So those are the things, like when I started this project, the families were so important. Now, I don't know, did you ever write a letter to anybody because of loss or?
No, the platoon sergeant handled it his own way.
Yeah.
If he wanted me to. The company commander, I don't think I saw him 3 times the whole time I was there. It's like, other than, you know, just stop by and say, you're going here, and that's, and sometimes I wouldn't even see him at all. So it was a strange situation but you know, as long as the platoon sergeant was happy with what's going on and everything looked normal to him, I was going to go along with what he said.
How long had you been there before you actually felt kind of comfortable and confident that when I take my guys out today, if something happens, I know exactly what...
Well, after September 5th, for pretty much everything that could go wrong did go wrong, particularly from a command standpoint. I mean, I didn't even know what to tell the platoon. I really didn't know what to say. That, I'm sorry, you just saw the United States Army flee the battlefield.
Yeah,
you know.
that's unreal.
So after that, everything else sort of fell by the wayside. It's like, oh, great, as long as you don't have, you know...
Do you remember the very first guy in your platoon that got killed?
Yeah, it was a squad leader, and I can't remember what his name was, but that's what I described in the book. He was right next to me, and that's why I got it. When I completely freaked out, I basically lost it for at least 2 or 3 minutes, where I just was like, just hugging the ground, going like, "What just happened here?"
Yeah.
You know, I was just so terrified, and then finally I started coming back, and then I got back into doing the job I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah. And I think what happens is, and this is a lucky thing for us, our minds, when the instant that happens, goes like this. And all of a sudden your focus is about this big, and so all this other stuff if we had to deal with all the other stuff, we wouldn't make it. And so our mind goes like this, and now we're able to see just in front of us, and you started to make decisions. I mean, but you couldn't do the whole picture. You had to start with the focus picture.
Well, when I actually woke up, as I can say, probably the best way to put it, I started crawling back and forth and saying, there's a sniper out there, so every time you shoot, you got to move a foot or two. And then they were calling the Air Force, and that's when I started saying, well, every time we fire, they run out of their things, so I'll wait and have the plane.
The Phantoms?
This is when I think it was the F-105, but it doesn't really matter. When they would come in, they would drop it, so then we would start firing, and they would come out of their bunkers just in time for the bonds.
Yeah.
So I got to working with that, and finally I talked to the company commander. We've been out there for like 6 or 7 hours. I'm going like, we were all strung out. I'm going like, we've got to get somebody behind us here. That's Cambodia.
Exactly.
Like a quarter mile away is Cambodia. And so he finally got the permission to start gathering everyone up but I put a machine gunner on one flank just because I'm saying, we need to, got to have something over here, guys. You just can't be all shooting over here.
Otherwise you're toast.
Well, it could be, but see, that's a good thing about reading these guerrilla warfare books. You just realize that, you never leave a flank exposed because they're going to find it.
Mm-hmm. In how long, you were the platoon leader for 6 months? Was that the normal, officers would be out there for 6 months?
No, I was there. The normal tour is supposed to be 6 months online and then 6 months off.
Right. They'd make you an XO or something like that.
Yeah, because they're grooming you to become a company commander.
Yeah.
Which is what they wanted me to do. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to get out of here. But I think I was only online for like 45, maybe 45, I can't remember how many days. It seemed like forever. I'd say no more than 70 days.
Okay.
Because after September, they lost so many other officers. They pulled me out because they wanted me to go groom me immediately to become a company commander.
Yeah, there was a lot of attrition there, wasn't there?
The officer corps was just stripped, lean. I mean, every company would have 2 officers. Mm-hmm. The company commander and not even using an XO. They would have just
the platoon that you took over operated without a platoon leader for many, many months. I mean, they're just, as soon as they get there, they'd be gone. And usually it wasn't because they ran away, it's usually because they got shot.
Yeah, or blown up.
And you know as well as I do, you were a target.
Anybody next to the radio is a target.
The antenna was the bullseye.
Well, they understood if to cut command and control. I mean, the first motto of guerrilla warfare is like, you fire the guy at the radio and the guy standing next to him.
Yep. What was it like for you to be out at night during that monsoon season, up to your neck in a rice paddy all night long?
Well, I tried to describe it in my novel, but I think I did a pretty good job. It's just the most miserable thing you could do in your life. Plus, you couldn't have any mosquito repellent, and you couldn't even have your poncho because the water would drip and would tap. So you would just sit there and just literally get eaten alive. I mean, your mosquito repellent was your towel that you try to cover on your face and eyes. But I remember walking the next morning, just feeling all these bumps all over my body. It just made it like sucked dry.
The mosquitoes, I tell people this and they don't believe me. The wingspan on Vietnamese mosquitoes are about like that. I swear it. And they can bite through your fatigue.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever, like, your pants touched your skin and it compressed it, they could go right through that material and get you.
Didn't slow them up a bit.
I used to wake up and I'd be all around my belly, would be bitten alive. And that was part of the most discouraging thing. In rice paddies all night, and then mosquitoes, and then the final coup de grace was the leeches.
I was like, I love those leeches. Well, anyway.
No, tell us about the leeches. I mean, everybody wants to know that.
Well, it's the only thing you use mosquito repellent for. It's getting the leeches off you.
Exactly.
which is it just was amazing to just be that miserable. And
good point. And it discouraged me, especially the leeches. If we'd been going all day in the rice paddies and then we'd get out, and the first thing we'd do is check for leeches. And you remember you could tie your fatigue pants? It had a string and you tie, and you'd say, how do these things get up? How do they get up here?
It was amazing.
I never figured it out.
Well, they've been around billions of years, so they've got it down to a
they figured it
science.
out. And then the mosquito repellent, like you say, and
Can't use it, which is sad.
and so forth. But man, that was, and a lot of people don't realize what discouragement is when you're in a situation in life where, number one, you and I couldn't just say I'm done and I'm going home.
Well, plus the sad thing for me was that there's an additional component that what they were telling us to do, I thought was stupid in fighting a guerrilla war. I mean, it's like, it's like, no, we shouldn't be, this is not what we should be doing. The real way to do it is, every village should have had like a platoon or a company with it, and you live there with the people and you work with the people.
And by the way, they did do that later. What was the guy's name that, highest decorated guy, Hackworth.
Yeah.
He actually put together a program where the GIs would live in the village and help them and so forth.
Absolutely.
And it was a very successful program.
What you've got to do, you've got to get, it sounds like a joke because Nixon says hearts and minds, not realizing that he had no clue what it takes but these people could have used you had all these guys sitting around, they could have been helping in the field, they could have been doing lots of things to say, no, we're here to help you.
Exactly.
And then, because it's just so sad. And then Iraq and Afghanistan, Afghanistan just makes me, 17 years?
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get it done in 7, it's time to leave.
You bet.
You've lost.
So the day came when somebody came and said, the CO wants to see you. You go back there and they said, Howard, we got to have you in here. We got to have you be doing something. You're not going to be platoon leader anymore. What was that like?
I was in S4 because there was so much theft that they wanted an officer available at both, not only in Cu-Chi. Lieutenant Grawl was S4 in Cu-Chi, and I was S4 out there.
For people that don't know, what is S4?
Supply.
Okay.
Because you guys, your clothes are rotting off your backs.
Right.
I mean, me too. Your boots was falling apart, and they couldn't get these things because they were being stolen at the docks. And even though we try to do as much as we can, that was probably one of the best things that. You remember the guy who was the company clerk?
Jim Calvert.
The first time.
Jim Calvert.
The first time the military got it right. Put a smart guy.
The supply guy, sergeant. Yeah.
Find a smart guy to be the supply guy. It's like the smartest thing they ever did.
Yeah. And it was quite a bartering thing. I mean, those guys to get something had to trade this, and it was quite a deal.
Which is ridiculous. There shouldn't have been. The guys that are out in the field fighting the war really should be the best dressed. If you don't mind me saying so.
Did the mosquito repellent not work on the mosquitoes? Is that what happened?
No, it worked, but the smell would carry.
Smell for who?
It was.
For the Viet Cong, they could smell. You could smell that. It's like
It was DEET.
Oh, and then the poncho, they could hear the rain.
Tap, 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 tap,
Oh, yeah.
Gotcha. I was just thinking about someone who might not, I was trying to think about it for a minute. I thought,
And the
It worked for
mosquito
me, just
repellent
not
had a
for
very
mosquitoes.
distinct, strong smell.
gotcha.
And it was easy enough to, it was as
great
easy
for
to-
leeches, though.
Yeah, and it was as easy to smell that as it was if a Viet Cong was in the area smoking dope. I mean, that wafting, that dope smell would waft around, and you'd say to yourself, I don't know where he's at, but he's here, because that stuff carries, Did you ever have one of your troops, when you were platoon leader, think he could smoke out on an ambush patrol?
Not on an ambush patrol, but we had so Sergeant Merguez, we had the 3-day rule. So the first day it was all day patrol, then the next one was all night ambush, and then the next morning we were off until 12 o'clock.
Yeah, that was pretty much the way it was.
And so I would say, if you guys want to smoke dope, smoke it now. Then don't be smoking when we're out there, or not ambush and get yourself killed. I said, this is
Or me,
smoking
or
lamp.
get me killed.
Right. This
right?
designating smoking lamp is on.
Yeah.
You can make it 2 days.
And there's something that I saw happen. When I got there in 1968, it was pretty tight. We had platoon sergeants that would say, cut your hair, get new fatigues, you got a hole in that one, get new boots because you don't have any toe in that one. No, I mean, they were on you. And then the longer I was there, all of a sudden it was like towards the middle of 1969, guys started wearing peace symbols.
I know.
Which theoretically, if your platoon sergeant came up and saw you with a peace symbol on, that could have been an Article 15, at least an Article 15. And all of a sudden that didn't happen. And then the next thing you know, at like Shamrock or some of those places, or Diamond, there would be on the side of a bunker where they had the ammo cases, FTA. Do you remember seeing some of that when you were there in 70?
I'm sure I saw it, but by the time 1970 rolled around.
So I mean, the respect, I mean, the guys, the guys out in the field pretty soon didn't have that discipline or that respect.
Absolutely.
And that I think that was kind of the beginning of the end.
And I didn't blame them. It's
Yeah.
like, as far as I'm concerned, I thought it was the most criminal fraud I've ever seen perpetrated in the United States, in Vietnam. It's just really sad. But it, you know, for me, I asked for the ultimate challenge, and I got it.
Yeah. Who were you writing home to during the time in Vietnam?
I met this one woman who was a model, and for some reason, I think she wanted to know that she wanted to tell her dad, I guess it was a Vietnam vet, World War II vet, that she was writing someone in Vietnam. So she was really amazing artist.
How about your folks?
She wrote these. Oh yeah. Well, actually, I'll tell you a funny story. After I got there, like after Shamrock, I couldn't write home. I said, "What am I going to tell my mother? I can't tell her about this." You know, it was like, so I didn't write my mother for like, you know, a long period of time. And when I did write her, I said, I'm back in Cu Chi in base camp.
Everything's great.
I'm safe. You know, everything's wonderful. Well,
Went for a walk today.
I got the Medal for Valor on September 5th, and of course that went back to the family newspaper.
Oh,
and
yes.
so my mother reads the newspaper, goes like, you know, Howard Hibbard, decorated for valor, and so she knew I was lying to her. And when I was actually given the award, the battalion commander says, "Okay, Mr. Hibbard, I want you to go back to your bunker and write your mother." Yeah.
Well, same thing happened to me. is after Diamond 1, when we got overrun and wiped out, I pretty much shut down for 3 weeks, and of course I was trying to write my mom, and it was always the same thing. Everything's great. Oh, we went for a walk today. I don't know. I mean, really, just ridiculous. My mother's sitting at home in San Diego watching Walter Cronkite every night, and they always had about 5 minutes of war on that TV set. And my poor sainted mother, every night she watched, she thought she saw me. And so it wasn't jiving. What I was telling her and what she was seeing on TV just didn't seem to make any sense. So my mom worried. I mean, my mom, I'm sure all moms did, but my mom really worried, you know, that there was something. So what does she do? She goes to the Red Cross. Is my son dead? Is he wounded? I haven't heard from him in 3 weeks.
There you go.
Do you know what the Red Cross did? Went right to your company commander and said, "Why isn't Big John writing his mom anymore? She's calling, complaining, and she's worried sick." You had to go before the company commander.
Well, the company commander was shot the day before, so
What?
he bled out.
What's the matter with you? Why aren't you writing your mom? Well, the fact of the matter is I just can't. My head's unscrewed. You know.
I don't want her to know this.
You know, and so,
I didn't want to know it myself.
And so the whoever you were standing before said, "Knock it off. Just write her anything. Just send her something, and get her off my back." It was him. He was. I don't want to hear from the Red Cross anymore because it was paperwork, and they didn't want to have to hassle with that. So I wrote my mom again, and "Oh, Mom, sorry, everything, you know, we just were moving," and I mean, so she never did get an honest letter. I was a little bit better with my dad because he and I had a relationship, you know, where we'd been pretty close, and you know, he taught me hunting and all the things that dads, you know, and their sons do. So I never told him the real bad stuff, but my dad was smart. He figured out how to go to news outlets and specifically find out what the 2nd and the 27th Wolfhounds were doing in Vietnam. And then he started cutting those articles out and sending them to me. And
Explain this to your mom.
No, explain it to me. You know, this and the one I'm thinking of is when we got overrun at Diamond. And that was huge in the San Diego Tribune. They had like a half a page on that, and most of it was false. They didn't mention hardly anything about our losses or our casualties, and they totally hyped up and gave false numbers on how many we killed. Now let me tell you something, we killed a lot of them. But you know, I think the estimate was that first night we killed 281 NVA coming across that border. The paper said 483. I mean, you know, so, and that's even more gruesome than 200 is a horror story, but to double it. And so my dad's going, now, knock it off, tell me what's going on. And I said, well, yeah, I happened to be there
I was just hanging out with the boys.
night. And so I was a little bit more, I disclosed a little bit more to him. And so anyway, I just was wondering if you wrote anybody in particular, your folks, and all of us have the same story. Of course I didn't tell them what was going on. You know, why would you want your mother in night terrors like you were having, you know? So, okay, so now you're S4, and what, did you do that for the rest of your tour, or did they move you to different positions?
Well, as part of S4, like they wanted to clean up Firebase Jackson because we had too many radio antennas.
Oh.
So they assigned me the duty to clean it up. So I ended up devising this long telephone pole, and it had for each pole, it had 4 separate antennas. They had like 26, God knows, radios, so they had like 3 of them. And so they were really happy with that. That kept them busy for a while. And then there's a couple other projects they had me do.
Okay. And then did you ever get an R&R?
Yes,
And where did you go?
Taiwan.
Oh, you went to Taiwan. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's in my book pretty clearly.
Well, nobody watching this is gonna know that, so I think you should at least be kind enough to
I'll be happy.
share a little bit.
Taiwan was interesting because it was a really different world. And I was terrified of Orientals, so it was kind of a bad idea at the time. I didn't think about it, but I just didn't want to be in country for Christmas and New Year's. So I was able to arrange that. The only place I could do that was Taiwan, and they would line up the prostitutes, and I picked one and just hung out with her for the week. And mostly, she had to drag me out of the room because I was terrified to be walking out the street going like.
Well, every noise and every weird, we were pretty hyped up.
Thank you. We were really long gone,
Yeah.
so to speak.
So R&R was at least, you were out of country for a week, so
Yeah.
that was a good thing.
Yeah, but then you had to go back.
And then you had to go back. Were you wounded in
I took a piece of shrapnel in my ass, and I never reported it.
Okay.
It was part of an American bomb that exploded, and it went up and then just came down.
Oh, wow.
And then no, it wasn't direct. It would have taken my ass off, but
Yeah.
it just was left like a cut there.
We actually had a situation where they dropped some 2,000-pound tunnel busters, and the earth that it dislodges and throws up in the air, and those big pieces were coming across the river and down on us, and one of them hit a guy below the waist and broke both his legs.
I believe it.
I mean, so I understand when you say stuff was coming down, yeah, I know what you're saying. And did you receive any awards while you were there?
Yes.
And can you share with us what those were?
I got a Bronze Star with a V, another Bronze Star. I don't know what it was for. I guess because I was there, and then there was an Army Commendation Medal.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember anything else. They were all combat related.
Those were important ones. Did you feel pretty good about that?
No, I felt terrible about it. I felt terrible about the whole thing. I felt terrible about the experience. I still don't feel really good about the experience.
When you look back now, though, and you see that you were recognized for valor and for making good decisions, what does that make you feel like? Are you angry about it? Did you think my whole time there was worthless? Or do you somehow or another go, you know what? I did my job, and I did the best I could, and you know what? Somebody else saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself. Do you ever feel like that?
I think they tried to buy me off, and so I wouldn't talk about the fact that people fled the battlefield. So
Howard, I hate to tell you this, they didn't use awards and recognition for bribing people.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
But
Can't let you off the hook on that one.
But later on in life, when I was a litigation attorney, I would be litigating against sometimes other attorneys that had, went to Yale or Harvard or whatever, And sometimes they were just big people that thought that they could just push people around. And I would always ask them, do you have a gun? And they'd drop dead. After Vietnam, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be intimidated. So it was, I think the experience for me gave me a real sense, a foundation about being careful. First of all, understanding what you're doing, being careful about what you're doing, and I really learned some incredible things in Vietnam that have served me well. And one of them was never questioning. If I researched it well and did it well, then no one's going to back me off by just trying to intimidate me. So any intimidation.
Well, you learned in
gone.
Vietnam that you were given a lot of orders that A, did not make any sense, and B, on their face was a suicide mission. And so a human being cannot look at that and say, I'm not going to do it. You just couldn't do that. Because of the chain of command, and Vietnam was serious. I mean, it was a military war. And so nowadays people would go, like my grandson, he's a millennial. If the CO would have given him that order that night, he'd have said, no, I'm not going to do it. I mean, it's a difference in thinking. And I think my grandson's a lot smarter than I am, with all the technical stuff and so forth. But they question everything.
Well, I'll tell you one thing would happen for sure. If I was there, you would have crossed the Van Co Dam River on a rope. I guarantee you that. I would have said, I would have drawn the line there. I said, you give me a boat, I'll go. I don't want to go, but I'll go.
Yeah.
But I'm crossing that river on a rope. And then you have to dive in the water, get the radio. He lost the radio. How terrifying is that? But get that man.
Yeah.
Throw away the machine gun, get him.
Yeah. So you come home. Oh, by the way, when did you come home from Vietnam?
March 20th, 1970.
Okay. And what did you hit the United States? What did you do? Go home?
No, I hung out and said, I was no frame of mind to go home.
Was your commitment done? Your military commitment? Were you?
Yes.
Oh, so you were finished.
Yeah, because I did 1 year in Germany first.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then I did
yeah.
my second year.
Okay.
Second year in Vietnam. So I was done. No, I ended up talking about it in Revenge of the Coloring Book. I met this German woman, and I basically just hung out with her for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Just became, her play toy, which is perfectly wonderful by me. And
then did you make it home then? Delaware? Did you go back
my mother called me and said, are you ever coming home?
Yeah.
Because I'd been out of discharge for 2 weeks. And so finally I came back, and then I went on to Cape Cod and worked as a waiter. And the second novel, this is the novel I really want to do for veterans, I think the hardest thing it was for me was to go back to school and come back to the United States and somehow believe that this is going to be normal, a normal transition into.
There is no such thing.
It's like I was did like one idiocy and I was coming back to another idiocy. Where all of a sudden now, how fast your car is and how much money you have now really is some sort of indication of what kind of person you are. So it's equally stupid. Plus going back to school, I had to go back to school as a sophomore. So as a sophomore, these people are like treating me like nice little, going like. Forget it. I mean, I've already done all this stuff.
Yeah, I'm much older than you.
Yeah, that's just,
and mentally, I'm really much older than you.
By a long shot. Yes, but I worked as a waiter, and I felt it actually was hard to learn it, to get my mind turned around from calling in artillery or whatever the hell we were doing, and just to learn the menu and learn how to interact with people, and so. I spent the summer on Cape Cod and then went back to college, and I luckily had the second book is dedicated to Matt John, same name, because he actually he was instrumental in helping me to.
That was my next question. I was going to say, when you came home, do you feel like you had any adjustment issues?
Still do.
No, I mean it's a good question.
Well, as I said, the whole second novel is exactly about that, and I've rewritten it so it's got a lot more edge to it, and Jennifer's going to translate it to English, which is nice. And so
when did you ever hear the term PTSD?
I started hearing that probably the reason why I heard about PTSD was because the kind of litigation I was doing, sometimes I would do personal injury litigation.
Oh, yeah.
And so what would happen is someone would get in a car crash and they had different, they didn't call it PTSD then, but that's what it was. They would call it
Oh, yeah,
traumatic.
no, that's why I was asking.
Traumatic neurosis. So I actually followed from traumatic neurosis to the situation triggering events.
My grandfather was shell shock.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, no, that's what they called it. It was PTSD, but yeah, by any other name, it's still PTSD. So I know for a fact that you have put a lot of effort into understanding PTSD and helping other people
Absolutely.
understand it and so forth. And so if you could just briefly describe how you started handling it, how you started to cope with things that normally wouldn't be coming through your mind, or you know, you're acting in some ways and you go, wait a minute, that's not exactly me, or you know.
Well, PTSD basically ran me around like a pony, controlling my mind. I had no idea. And what I was able to do was, by staying in shape, I basically stayed pretty much drunk and stoned from the time I was back to the time I finally got diagnosed. And then they gave me this drug, mirtazapine, which was incredible.
Never heard of it.
It doesn't work for everyone, but it worked perfectly for me. It just dropped my anxiety levels by 1/2. And I used mirtazapine and some THC, marijuana. I find it's really a really nice balance. But you know, it's like, so even sitting in this room, I can say, let's see, like explosions going off. It's just certain things are just always there that don't go away, but you just learn to live with them.
Yeah, and that's a key right there. That's what I was hoping you were going to say, is, you know, it's not necessarily the fact that these combat warriors get cured of PTSD or that it suddenly goes away. It's just a matter of learning.
Yes.
And how to cope and learn the signs, so that when something happens, you go, well, okay, wait a minute. Don't have to panic, right? I mean, things. And you started to, part of your therapy was cooking.
Yes. Yeah, I really recommend it for all veterans. Having some chore that you can do during the day that you completely control. Like for me, being shopping, first deciding what am I going to cook, shopping for it, cooking it, enjoying it with your family and friends, and then cleaning up is a really great way to bring your mind back to earth and stop it from running around or running you around.
And have you actually dealt with guys about that? I mean, have you
Yeah.
shared that and worked with guys?
I've actually done two different things. One is I'm starting a movement called 20 Veterans a Day, because 20 veterans a day are committing suicide.
Yes.
And at a minimum, if you have an all-volunteer army, it's really a bad PR to say, oh yeah, we'll train you to be a soldier, and then you come back and kill yourself. You know, so.
Yeah, I don't think the recruiters mentioned that.
So it's 20 Veterans a Day, but part of 20 Veterans a Day is I'm trying to get what they call discharge training, whereby for 1 month they get the psychiatrists go through them and see what they've got going on mentally. They're taught how to use a computer. They're taught how to interview, and when they leave after like 1 month, they go for it goes on a national job data bank, and they've got 6 months of that they have to be in group counseling until they get through the job and either the job works or they're going back to school to see what's going on. So because if 20 veterans a day are killing themselves, how many others are like drinking themselves to death?
Or almost there.
Yes.
I mean, how many are almost there?
Yes.
So-
It's just ridiculously sad. It's also really expensive. You know, to think that they're just not dealing with these things. So as I said before, you probably, if you hear 20 veterans a day, that's something I've been trying to promote.
Okay.
And another thing I try to promote for veterans is, you know, find something that gives you a chance to ground yourself every day. For me, it just happens to be cooking. It could be playing Parcheesi. It doesn't matter.
By the way, would you knock off showing bags of Dungeness crabs on the internet? I'm sitting in Montana. We haven't even seen a Dungeness crab.
Well, next time you come back out, we'll have it for you. We'll have a crab fest. Absolutely.
No, I got to tease you about that. So you went back to college, and
Yeah.
what'd you get a degree in?
Economics.
Okay.
And
And
then,
did you use that degree?
No, I went to law school, It was just the.
You got your 4 years done and now,
Well, I actually did. College was so disgustingly stupid. I actually did the whole 4 years in 2.5 because I was a sophomore. So I just took like
Yeah, of course.
18 to 20 credit unit per, and then went to summer school. Anyway, I went up to Los Angeles to law school at Southwestern University.
why did you choose law school?
Because if you're stupid enough to want to go out and be a platoon leader, then you need to understand that you probably need to find a profession whereby you can exercise those talents. And the litigation attorney it's either that or be a sniper. So
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Well, I did get an offer to go to Biafra when I got back. I don't know how they got the fact that I was home, but it was $100,000 in a Swiss numbered account, $10,000 a month, and if I extended it, another $120,000. But I told him my luck had run out.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly I know exactly, when you say that exactly rings a
So
bell.
I'm done, buddy. I was like,
Were you a good attorney?
yes.
And
It was fun being a good attorney. It was also, I prided myself on always representing the small guy. I never charged the most. Jennifer can tell you that, she used to scream at me that my fees are usually 1/3 to a half of what the big guys were charging. Because small businessmen, sometimes they were insured, sometimes they weren't insured.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna be playing, luckily when I went to law school, I went to law school at night and worked full-time during the day for a law firm, which is the only way to, unless you go to Yale or Harvard,
Yep.
you gotta find out what your profession's about before you go wandering out. I mean, the fact that they grant guys a law degree and say go out and foster among the general public,
Sure.
I think it's outrageously irresponsible.
Sure.
So I was a law clerk for 4 years, and I just was able to open up my own law firm and just be a litigation attorney, which suited my personality.
And then didn't you get into real estate law at one point?
Oh, what I mostly did was real estate litigation.
Okay. I knew you were in real estate, that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, I was there when everything went bad.
Before I found you, had you kept in touch with any of the guys you served with?
No.
So nothing, you didn't know what happened to any of them?
No, it didn't. It's one of those things where after I got spit on at San Francisco Airport, which seems to be the tour de force.
Yeah.
I don't know why they put people through that, but when I came back, I just took the whole war and just put it in the back of the closet. And even I didn't even talk to any other veterans, and I would never tell war stories because if you can't induce that element of fear, it's just empty words floating around.
How can this person relate?
That's it. If I hold a knife at their throat and tell them the story, they might get.
So, what did you think of the first reunion you came to?
It was the most incredible experience of my life. I thought it was wonderful. And particularly having the people welcome us home. It just brought a tear to my eye because we got nothing.
Yes.
Except abuse. It's like, first time in American history that the American public blamed the soldiers who fought the war. First time it's happened.
Absolutely.
It's outrageous.
But I will give you one thing to think about. It was because of that happening to us that it never happened to anybody else after us.
And also, they have a farewell party. When people got killed in Vietnam, they went in the bag and they were gone. Now they have a little ceremony with a boot and a rifle.
I've seen it, yeah.
Thank you. It gives these guys a chance to grieve. These are the people they're living with.
That's a good point.
It's ridiculous.
That's a great point. I actually, because that brings up a memory, we lost well, you have met his wife, Wunderlich.
Yes.
And Mike, when he got killed, they had a memorial service for him in Cu Chi. And our lieutenant said, you guys are gonna go. And no choice, you're going. And that affected me so badly. I never went to another one. I refused. I just said, I'm never gonna go to another memorial service. Now, I'm not sure what happened. I mean, I'm not really clear about why that's so negative. It was too fresh. It was too horrible.
But the reality of just how dangerous and how terrifying.
You know, and that was one and only. I said, and I never went to another one.
Well, for one, maybe it's just speaking as a stupid lieutenant, but as far as I'm concerned, if you have people that are as as close knit as a platoon. You need to have something that they get to say goodbye. Don't just shove them in a bag and that's it. It's like this, where'd Joe go?
Well, you know as well as I do, in Vietnam, when we put them on the chopper, we didn't know, we knew if they were breathing when we put them on the chopper, but that was it. When they left, we never got any reports. We never had anybody say, oh, by the way, he made it. And they sent him to Japan. So you're always in your mind, what happened to this guy?
Well, the company commander bled out, and so I actually heard that because they said you're now the company commander.
Oh, I mean, you know what I'm saying? And so that was part of that problem with us in the field.
Absolutely.
And then if it gets bad enough, then when your new replacements come in, you go, I don't want to have another, don't tell me your name. I don't want to know your girlfriend's name. I don't want to know your dog's name, period. You stay away from me because you're going to get me killed. And then all of a sudden, this actually happened with 8 of us at Trang Bang, and we were the only ones left after Diamond 1. And we said, pretty soon we got, wait a minute, here's all these guys that know nothing, less than nothing. If we don't train them, they're really going to get us killed. and so then we went to a reversal, and then now, okay, and a couple of them actually attached themselves to my hip.
Smart move.
And
I would have.
but you know what I'm saying. So it was kind of a funny reversal of, first of all, I don't even want to know who you are. But that's as a result of so many of our buddies and friends and so forth that just got wounded and left and never heard another word from them.
Well, I always viewed Platoon Sergeant Marquez as being sort of like a holy entity. That if I was really smart, I might even get through this alive. So I really liked working with him. He was a really interesting person.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I can't prove this because I've never found him because I think he went back to Puerto Rico. By the way, interesting thought. Do you know how many Gonzalez Marquezes there are in Puerto Rico?
You told me, I think it's like 10,000 or something.
No, 312,945. So when you look at that phone book that's about that deep, about a third of them or better is Gonzalez Marquez. And plus, it's expensive to call their phone numbers over there. So, but he was an interesting guy. His home was Fort Benning, Georgia.
Oh.
He joined in Puerto Rico. He brought his family and so forth, and they lived in that, I don't know what the town is at Fort Benning, but it starts with an M, I think. And so his family lived there the whole time he was in the service. I think he hit the end of the Korean War, came back, then Vietnam, 2 tours, ours, when he was with us, 3rd tour. Professional soldier, period. He was a pro, that's all he ever did. So when you say you had a lot of respect for him,
I viewed him next to God.
we did too. We certainly did. So, okay, I want you to give us your thought on something. What is your definition of a hero?
Well, more and more, now I'm 70 years old. I think it comes down to people doing their job under extraordinary circumstances, and it's the only way to describe it to me. And because you always see it when you talk to World War II vets or other vets, they're always saying, "I'm not a hero. I just did my job." And it's really interesting that it's a common theme.
No, you're absolutely correct. I speak at a lot of high schools, and I always, somewhere along the line, some girl in the back row will raise her hand and say, were you a hero? And I always look straight ahead and I go, you know what? No. I wasn't a hero, but I served with a lot of them. And that's the way we think. The other guys were our heroes. We weren't heroes. Did you think you were a hero?
Well,
I mean,
when the whole company left and we were there alone with my platoon, I did not feel like a hero.
I mean, and that's the way I've always thought that. Some of my guys did some of the most heroic things, and yet, if you talk to my guys, you know who their hero was? Me. I'm the one that did this. I'm the one, but I never saw it like that. I just never did. I never saw it like that, and I'm sure that's why you said what you said. It's somebody else doing extraordinary things under extraordinary circumstances. Well, you know what? That was you.
Well, it's a bad idea. Trust me.
Well, but that was you. And yet we don't see that. We never see ourselves. One of the reasons I do the reunions is because I want to make sure that every single man that served with us is given the chance to regain his pride in the service that he did. Because when we came home and got treated the way we did,
Absolutely.
we took that and we put it away and we locked the box. And so many guys for so many years never had any sense of pride, which means it's a bad feeling. It's not a good feeling, right? And so one of the reasons I have the reunions, and because I want to recognize, I want to make sure these guys know that it wasn't for nothing. You know,
You're doing a great job.
but
so
you
thank
and I both know it was ridiculous. And what they made us do was absolutely nuts. But it didn't, you know, I always tell these kids at school, you can always hate war, but please don't hate the warrior. Please, you know, hate the war, but don't hate the warrior, because you know what? We were doing the best we could. You know, and you know as well as I do, we never mass killed women and children in villages and so forth. So when we got home and Jane Fonda and her crew was at the gate there and telling us that we were baby killers and all this and that and the other, we're going, what? Where did that come from? And yet if you say that enough times, people start believing it.
True. And we did have some bad examples over there. The Kali regime, which I thought was ridiculous. It's like, you know, you want to make him more angry at you?
Yeah. One last thing I want you to tell us. What advice do you have for today's generation and the many generations to come? What advice do you have for them?
Stay out of the military. That's my first advice. If you decide to take it, just remember that once you get sucked up into that machine, then you're in that machine for whatever that machine is doing at the time. So just be really clear that even though you may disagree with it, that your opinion no longer counts anymore.
Do you think are the generations now coming up are smarter than we were?
No, they're not any smarter. What's happened is that the whole population has gained in intelligence. The United States is really a brand new country compared to like England and France and all these other countries. And so it's taken, every war has brought something new to the table where people had new realizations about different things. You know, and of course the sad thing is now we're doing the same thing in Afghanistan and Iraq. I'm going like 17 years. You know, in Afghanistan, it's the #1 exporter of heroin in the world. Now what's interesting is normally the Shiites and the Sunnis are always killing each other, but Afghanistan has so much heroin that's leaving the country. Pakistan, which is Shiite, which is Sunni, and Iran, which is Shiite, actually have a trade agreement. So all the United States is doing there is providing security for the drug barons.
Unbelievable.
So if you want to do the military experience, I tell you, it's an amazing experience. Really try and think about it more than I did, please, and just understand that when you do it, then you're it's doing the job, and forget what's right or wrong anymore. What's right or wrong is what you can do to make it better for everybody else and get through it alive.
Is there anything, Howard, that I haven't mentioned or brought up in this interview that you would like to share with us?
Just said, I can't tell you how let's see, flattered and that you're doing this, but also, you know, what you've done for me and this group of people. You know, I just wish it was happening to more Vietnam veterans. I mean, I feel so privileged that we've had this. I mean, normally a reunion is like a regiment. It's not a platoon. Mm-hmm. So, and if you put together this little platoon thing, it's like a gigantic encounter group. And what's interesting is I still go to couples counseling once a month with other veterans, combat veterans, you know, just to keep the lid on, as we say. And it's just you're really providing a forum for people to talk. And it looks like with PTSD, the only way to get out of it is you have to talk about it. They really don't have any drugs, they don't do this, but if you sit around and talk about it with the people who have a like kind of experience, it seems to work.
When did you get married?
Which time?
Yeah, those start at the beginning.
I think 72 for the first time for 25 years, and I've been hanging on with.
Any kids?
Yeah, two girls.
Okay.
I've got three grandchildren and one in the oven. That's two. One of them is leading quite the life in the world, and my other daughter's down in Panama City, Panama, because she always wanted to live at Fort Ford, and she's getting ready to have a son in June, so we're going to go down to see them in February.
Mm-hmm. Do you think your issues with PTSD during those years being married, did it have any effect on the marriage at all?
I'm sure my drinking and just being a terror had lots of impact on my poor wife.
No, I mean, you know, a lot of us are blueprints of that whole scenario. So then that was the first. Did you have a second marriage?
Yes, to Jennifer.
Oh, okay. Second and best.
Yes, absolutely. No, I got the deal of the century. And plus what was really fun was I was able to help Jennifer through what's really an incredibly hard time for her with her family, and give her a little bit of objectivity, you know, and also let her commiserate about, you know, well, if you think this is bad, you should have been in Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's like, as a matter of fact, one thing I used to do with my kids when they were growing up is that my two daughters, when they were driving or something, they'd bang up the car or do something wrong. And every time they come back to the house, they go, well, Dad, you know, I wrecked the car or whatever. And I'd say like, well, you didn't join the Army, did you? They go, no, okay.
You had to put things in proper perspective.
Okay, we're all going to be more careful.
Sure. Well, Howard, I want to personally thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
You know, for not only for serving and being there with us, but for having enough courage to come to the reunions, and especially to come here today, because you didn't know what I was going to say or do, and your service was so important, and you are so important. So thank you so much for allowing us to be a part of your life.
Well, thank you for giving all of us a forum, because what you're doing is probably the best thing for PTSD that can be done. And that's getting people together of like kind of experience.
And the wives that look, their first reunion, and the wives will look, and they'll come up to me at a break and say, I had no idea. I had no clue. You know why? Of course you know why, because the husband never said anything. He just lived his PTSD
Every day.
and never let her in on it. She was just the blunt. She was just the brunt of our problems. And so that's why, you know, I was married 3 times. And Laura's the third and best.
Yeah, you did.
And,
You had to screen out.
you know, but no, there's so many. I think most of the veterans were married more than once.
Oh,
to be perfectly honest with you.
I believe it.
So, and why I say did PTSD have a part of that? Well, of course, you know, whether it was, you know, some guys were actually very violent and belligerent and whatnot. Some guys were not. Some guys were just like Cool Hand Luke, right? But it all was inside, and it all had an effect.
Absolutely.
So.